This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Hey, welcome back everyone to Justice Pending. Before we get started with a big case this week, we have to talk about something personal. The true crime show that we've spent years developing together is finally out now.
Yes! Killer Confessions, Claire. I'm so thrilled that this became a reality, mostly for you, you've had this idea for like a decade at this point, right? I mean, it's crazy.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I had to do the math, Susan. The show is called Killer Confessions: Case Files of a Texas Ranger. It is streaming now on HBO Max, and I've been dreaming and scheming and working on this for 7 years, Susan.
Yeah, I know. And it's amazing how good things come to those who wait. And here we are, and it's out now. And I know you worked so hard on it. So I am thrilled.
Yes, so Killer Confessions tracks the incredible career of Texas Ranger James Holland, who has a unique brand of interrogation tactics. If you've read my book, Killer Story, then you know the genesis of this show was my 2019 story on 60 Minutes called The Ranger and the Serial Killer.
That's right. And that serial killer was none other than Samuel Little, the most prolific killer that we know of in our lifetime. And it's, he had murders all over the country, but specifically in California is what put him away in jail. And you were a big part of that. And there's actually a very strange connection here that we'll circle back to later in this episode. So we'll put a pin in that for now.
Yes, it is so crazy how everything is connected in the true crime world, Susan.
It really is. I was listening to another podcast earlier in the week and my jaw dropped and I called you and, the rest will be history there when we talk about it. But yes, it is all connected. Crazy.
All right, so don't miss Killer Confessions: Case Files of a Texas Ranger, streaming now on HBO Max with new episodes dropping every Wednesday.
Okay, and now let's get into this week's episode of Justice Pending.
There are some cases in true crime that feel untouchable, not because they're solved, but because they become something else entirely. Legends, obsessions, cautionary tales.
And two of those cases sit at the very top of that list. We're talking about the murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, and the Zodiac killings.
So they happened decades apart in California, in different cities, and under completely different circumstances.
That's true. But for most of modern history, no serious investigator believed they had anything to do with one another.
Until now.
Yes, today we are talking about a theory that claims something almost unthinkable, that these two high-profile unsolved cases may point to the same man.
It's not an official resolution. There's been no arrest, no confession, and no trial.
But it is one of the most thoroughly argued, independently reviewed theories we've ever covered.
Yeah, when I came across an article in the Los Angeles Times about this potential connection, I was transfixed from start to finish. The reporting asks very intriguing questions, namely, what if the truth was always there, just buried under bad timelines, assumptions, and missed connections?
That's right. And Michael Connolly, yes, the famous author, has a new podcast out called Killer in the Code. And he's releasing episodes right now. I believe only the first 3 are out. But he has thoroughly investigated this alongside longtime Los Angeles homicide and cold case investigator Mitzi Roberts, who, Claire, personally.
Well, it's pretty crazy. I have worked, through LAPD and through the investigation of the Samuel Little case. Mitzi Roberts has been involved with that. So she was part of the prosecution of Samuel Little when he was convicted of 3 murders in LA County, and was known as a triple murderer, a serial murderer, but did not really get his full distinction and known as the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States until Texas Ranger James Holland got involved and got him to confess to 93 murders, Susan. So I've never met Mitzi Roberts. I don't know her, like I know Ranger Holland, who, I've worked with for this series and for the 60 Minutes piece, but her name has been all over reports and all over case files for Samuel Little. So to see, it come up again with the Black Dahlia case and with the Zodiac killings, it's just really fascinating to me, the familiarity there, right? These are just another serial killer in California.
Shocking, right? I
Yep.
mean, why is it's Texas and California and Florida? I'll throw Florida in there too. It's
I think it's the
interesting, right?
heat, Susan. That's
It
my
might,
theory. It makes people do crazy things.
yeah, true. So let's go back to the beginning and give everyone a refresher. Before we go anywhere near Zodiac, we should talk about Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia. Los Angeles loves to give nicknames, sensationalize crime. So she's Black Dahlia. So many novels, so many documentaries, so many references throughout history since it's happened. So let's start there.
Yes. So the Black Dahlia, aka Elizabeth Short, was 22 years old when her body was found in January of 1947 in Los Angeles. She had been cut cleanly in half, drained of blood, and posed.
Wow. Yeah. And one of the things that they noted at the time was the precision in which she was, slaughtered, chopped in half. I mean,
Right.
detectives, believe that whoever had killed her did have anatomical knowledge. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned and with at least maybe not surgical precision, but enough knowledge of human anatomy to do it. I'm going to put it in quotes, right.
Yes. So everyone was completely shocked and horrified by this, as anyone would be, to
Yeah.
find a torso, drained of blood and posed in the middle of, a city. This is not how life is supposed to go, and it's certainly not how life is supposed to end. And so the case became a spectacle. There were headlines in every paper around the world. It was sensational. There were photos that never should have been published that were published. It has just become one of the most infamous unsolved murders in the history of society. So this nickname, the Black Dahlia, there was a popular movie called The Blue Dahlia that came out the year before, and it was said that Elizabeth Short loved to wear black, like she was always wearing black clothing, and so it kind of became this name that she didn't have when she was alive. She wasn't known as the Black Dahlia, but with her death, she became the Black Dahlia. And it's even what like the FBI refers to the case as the Black Dahlia murder. And it's one of those monikers that really stuck with the case and took on a life of its own.
That's true. I'd actually argue that most people, if you were to say the murder of Elizabeth Short, they, would say who. And then if you
Right.
said the Black Dahlia, they would know exactly who you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I mean the name really is catchy and it helped it stay in the press, right? Which
Yeah.
of course was always trying to identify a suspect.
And there were actually endless suspects at the time. There were actors, doctors, gangsters, directors, serial killers retrofitted into the story decades later. I mean, this was just so high profile.
Yes, and early on, Susan, very early, there was one suspect who stood out for reasons that had nothing to do with a Hollywood fantasy or any sensationalism. It's really police work 101.
That's right. And his name was the alliterative Marvin Margolis.
So Marvin was 21 years old. He was a USC pre-med student, a World War II Navy corpsman who had seen extensive battlefield trauma.
And one of the things that did stand out is he did have medical training, not as a doctor, but in combat conditions, which I mean, I could argue would you're sort of learning on the fly and
Right.
quickly. So he had handled bodies, he had performed what was essentially field surgery. And here's the kicker, most importantly, he had lived with Elizabeth Short for a while.
Yes, so he is the closest person to her, literally living in the same apartment. Not briefly, not casually. It wasn't like he was a roommate. They actually had a romantic relationship. The district attorney at the time said that Marvin was Elizabeth's boyfriend and they had lived together. It was estimated to be about 2 weeks in the months before she was murdered. So this was a recent relationship.
It was. And, you always look at the boyfriend, you always look
Yep.
at the husband. Marvin initially lied about how well he knew her. He actually said he didn't know her at all when first
And
questioned.
such a red flag, Susan.
Yeah, it
Be-
really is. Please don't lie, people.
yes. So the idea that if you have nothing to hide, if there's no reason to lie about it, why would you not admit that you had dated? Like,
That's
why would you try to keep that? Why would you not say that you'd lived together?
well,
So later, he did admit the truth. He told authorities they had dated, but by then, the police, had already started looking at other suspects and Marvin was distancing himself from the investigation in a very real way.
yeah, physically, he
Yeah.
moved to Chicago. He changed his name. And remember, this is like the late 1940s, early
Yep.
1950s. This is not, we're not putting air tags on Marvin. So he was able to do this. So, it just worked to his advantage.
Yeah, the idea that back in the 1950s you could just change your name and move to a different state and it would be like a needle in a haystack. It
Mhm.
seems quaint, doesn't it, Susan?
It really does. But here's something actually to pinpoint. He was never definitively cleared. So there are some Reddit threads out there and all the, the internet sleuths who say, "Oh no, they looked at him, he was cleared." He actually wasn't, according to Missy Roberts.
Right, but he was deprioritized.
Correct.
It was not like he was public enemy number 1, his face wasn't on flyers, they weren't really looking for him, and that is because investigators had developed a theory that Elizabeth Short had been kidnapped and held for days before she was killed.
And yeah, later evidence then suggested that the timeline may have been wrong, meaning Marvin's alibi may have been built on a false assumption.
Right, but by the time that became clear, he was already in the wind.
Yeah, so fast forward more than 20 years. Let's get into the Zodiac part of this.
Yep. So now we're in Northern California. It's the late 1960s, and there's a killer calling himself Zodiac who is terrorizing the Bay Area.
This is one of my favorite movies, Zodiac.
It is
I
it is
just
a
think
good
it
one.
does it recounts it so well. If you haven't seen this, please, please go see it. Robert Downey Jr., incredible. This spree consisted of 5 confirmed murders, letters, really interesting letters sent
Yes.
to newspapers, ciphers meant to taunt police and the public, really flaunting a high level of intelligence.
Yeah, so there's one cipher in particular that became infamous, the so-called Z13.
That is right. 13 characters preceded by the phrase, "My name is." And theoretically, those 13 letters would be his name identifying him.
Just unbelievably bold to
Oh,
think that
yeah.
you would actually put your name encoded
Uh-huh.
in a letter to the media and to the police.
Uh-huh.
And for decades, every serious attempt to solve this failed.
That's right. Until many, many, many years later, an unlikely person stepped in.
Yeah, so there's this code breaker. He's not a cop, he's not a private investigator, he's not even a career academic. He's just an average type guy, average looking guy that is obviously anything but. Why don't you tell us about him, Susan?
Yes. So this it really going back to Michael Connolly's latest podcast, you can go into way more detail, but
Yeah.
his name is Alex Baber. He is a self-taught code breaker who became obsessed with the Zodiac cipher. He is of genius level intelligence. And he believes he cracked the code on and accidentally linked the two murders,
It's
the two cases.
it's so incredible that he doesn't have, like, this formal training. But the idea that he's self-taught
Yeah.
is so fascinating, and he's been using AI,
Uh-huh.
he's been using massive data sets and generating tens of millions of possible names. I mean, really putting all all his effort into running down what could this possibly mean. My name is there's 13 combinations. What could it be?
That's right. And he did. He got down to, tens of millions and kept
Yep.
going. And he cross-referenced those names against military records, census data, anything he could find in the public record of names to narrow the field.
And so he says it took about 9 months until he arrived at one answer.
Marvin Merrill.
Yeah. So that's not Marvin Margolis, but it happens to be the alias that he had used for decades after leaving Los Angeles. That's the name he went by in the months after the Black Dahlia murder.
Yeah, I mean, pretty bold not to even change your first name,
Yeah.
right? Although I guess, maybe that's smart because you might not respond to a new first name, but still.
I mean, the idea that it's the same initial,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's like the bare minimum of anonymity. If you can even call it that. I mean, it's so similar. MM.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he had some monogrammed items he wanted to hang on to. I'm not, there might be a reason, but
I mean,
even
if I'm
so.
changing my name, I'm going all out. I'm gonna be like Esmeralda Adams or
Right.
something. I'm not gonna be on the same planet as my real name.
Yeah, I think it was still a flex. I think he was taunting authorities, dangling a little carrot in
Yeah.
case, that kind of thing. He clearly also had above average intelligence or, to be able to manipulate people with the cipher. And he was clearly bold and clearly he wanted to remain in a power position.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true that one person could be responsible for two very high profile unsolved murders. I mean, it's a series of crimes with Zodiac. So,
Yeah.
it's is it too good to be true, Susan?
I know. Well, here's where the skepticism matters and comes in. I mean, the two cases are certainly not the same MO, not the same murder weapon. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of differences. So it is smart to be a little skeptical about this.
I mean, plenty of people have claimed that they've solved the Zodiac killings before.
Yeah, there was, I believe, a son, right, who said, "Oh, my dad did it, and here's
Yep.
why." And it was like everyone, even I think Michael Connolly himself, had written the forward of the book, and then later regretted it when he realized that there was some flaws in the son's conclusion. So
Yeah.
people have gotten very close, and people have been convinced before.
Yeah.
So, you know, Baber didn't stop at his own conclusion and say, "Aha, I solve it. Believe me."
Yeah.
He took his work to every expert he could.
Yeah, I respect that. Like
Yeah.
he was like, test this. Am I right? Do
Yep.
you find fault with this? And so there's been, former NSA cryptographers who've reviewed his solution. They independently verified his methodology. And, they actually found something else.
Yeah, this is creepy. I don't personally know how ciphers work or
Yep.
how they're provoked, I guess, in the system, but he does, and that's what's important here. And he claims, and it appears to be, that the cipher is keyed using the word Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, of
The
all
I mean,
names.
Elizabeth Short, arguably, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say if this is true and it's Marvin, that was his first murder. Let's see. But
Yeah.
Elizabeth seemed to be really significant to him.
I mean, this is just an incredible twist and a decades long high risk game that Marvin was playing. If this proves to be true, it really seems like he was, dare I say, enjoying this, Susan?
Oh, I think that that's
Yeah.
what they do, these very highly intelligent serial killers. I think that's what they do. So the other part of this is that, um, Baber so let's back up. Marvin went on to have like 4 children, or maybe even more. I forget how
Yeah.
many. And Baber went to his son, one of his sons. And I think it was under the guise of I'm reporting on, the war and your father's name
Mhm.
came up and blah blah. And so pretty quickly after agreeing to meet with him, he said, I'm actually not here about the war. I'm here about these 2 killings and this cipher in particular. And, back then, yes, there were typewriters, but this guy used his own handwriting. The killer used his own handwriting to send in the ciphers. And so he showed it to the son, and the son was like, yeah, that's my dad's handwriting. Yes. Like he identified it. So,
Unbelievable.
yeah. And in that same conversation, not this was totally unexpected. Another piece of evidence, a super unsettling piece of evidence came to light.
Yeah, so there was this drawing, a sketch that Marvin had created and given to his son, and it's depicting a woman whose body appears severed.
Mm.
Her torso is marked, her lower half is missing, and it's titled Elizabeth. That's the name of the drawing.
Yeah, like in very bold sketched letters, like not hidden somewhere. We'll get to the hidden part in a minute.
Yeah.
But Claire, I cannot help but make a connection between this guy's artistic ability and Samuel Little's artistic ability.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels here. The serial killing, the taunting authorities, hiding
Mhm.
in plain sight,
Yep.
and yeah, drawing your victims, right? Samuel
I'm just an
Little.
investigator. But yeah, go
Yes.
on. This is crazy.
Yes.
Samuel Little's drawings. Go on.
Yeah, so I mean Samuel Little drew his victims years and years later for, Texas Ranger James Holland, but Samuel Little drew those murder victims with alarming detail and accuracy to the point that family members identified them
Yeah.
from the drawings. So, yeah, the idea that a serial killer would so perfectly remember his victims that he could draw them is pretty wild. Also, just the artistic skill required to do that. But so in this drawing of Elizabeth that Marvin did, he also hid a word in the shading. And what is that word, Susan?
None other than Zodiac. Bam.
Yeah. So, I mean, you would think these 2 crimes aren't connected. We talked about how they're in different cities, Northern California, Los Angeles, different places, and the idea that he's sitting there saying they're connected in all these different ways, using Elizabeth as the cipher for the Z13 code,
Uh-huh.
drawing this picture, right? And calling it Elizabeth and hiding the word Zodiac in it. It's like he wanted people to discover it. Like, is this a confession, Susan? Is it a coincidence? I don't think we can call it a coincidence.
No, I mean, this is a lot of evidence. It's really
Y-
starting to stack up.
yeah, I mean,
Even
the only thing I could think of, just in all my true crime stuff, Susan, I've
Yep,
been in this true crime world. I've worked so many of these cases with really sick people, and the only thing that comes to mind is that it could potentially be a disturbed fantasy that he
right.
wanted to have been responsible for killing Elizabeth Short, who he knew, who was his girlfriend, who was the Black Dahlia, that inspired him to become the Zodiac killer. and he
Coulda.
fantasized about being the killer of Elizabeth, but I I personally think that they are connected. I think it's the same person. It looks to me like too many connections are lining up for it to just be a disturbed fantasy. The fact that he had this training in the military and
Yeah.
aspired to be a surgeon, it's it's just something, isn't it? I mean, I just I'm stunned by it, really.
Yeah, no, it's stunning,
Yeah.
because this is the first time that these 2 cases have been linked, and when you look at it, when it's laid out, it's like, of course, it's like all the pieces fit together of the
Yeah.
puzzle.
Yeah. It doesn't mean the case is officially solved, right? According to LAPD, it's still unsolved, still open.
That's right. And guess what? We might never know because Marvin died in 1993.
Ugh. Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
terrible. It's terrible because there'll never be a trial. Not because he's dead. I'm quite frankly glad that he's dead.
yeah,
But there there's no way to posthumously put him on trial.
right,
They can declare the case closed. I've
right.
seen that happen before where they say we're officially closing this case. But again, that hasn't happened. And, they don't have any physical evidence other than, the drawings, which
Yeah,
are physically exist, right? But or the drawing, I should say, but it's not like they have DNA, right?
right. Exactly. I mean, citizen sleuths all
Yeah.
over are really impressing people, and I think, with AI and this guy's ability to devise his own code and quickly go through names and,
Yeah.
Alex Bieber, and he just seems so brilliant, and he does solve other cases. It's not, he is obsessed with this one
Yeah.
from the looks of it, but also, does solve cases. So it just seems like it just really makes a whole lot of sense, and I think a lot of the investigators that have worked on the case, have been assigned to the cold cases, agree, which that to me is the most impactful.
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive what he was able to put together and connect. And I just applaud his effort
Yeah,
and his absolute dedication to this. And the idea that AI here was instrumental in allowing him to do this really great code breaking work. And as someone who now teaches I teach college journalism classes and writing classes at Baylor, and I've seen some really bad uses of AI, Susan.
yeah,
But this is an excellent use of AI. This is the way to do it.
it is, and I will say again, there are a lot of details we didn't cover here in how he got to the
Yeah.
conclusions. You can hear from him himself. There, go listen to that podcast, Killer in the Code. It is very well done, and continues to release episodes. So I, for one, will stay tuned and intrigued by this case. I think a lot of people too will just really want, it's clarity. It's not about closure at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth Short never got justice in her lifetime. Her loved ones did not know what happened to her. But I think, being seen clearly and truthfully, even after all this time, matters.
Agree. And we as humans like closure.
Yeah,
So Zodiac, Black Dahlia, I mean, if you can clean those up nicely and put a bow around it, I think we'd
yep,
all appreciate that.
absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. Justice Pending will be back next week with an all new case.
Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and stay tuned.
Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.